Okay, so I already recorded the intro, so don't have a...
I can't believe you do an intro. I haven't done an intro for
Do you want me to record the intro again?
No.
Okay.
We all
know what we're doing.
Right.
Hey there, creative minds and business enthusiasts. Welcome to Looks Like We Made It, the podcast where we dive deep into the dynamic world of video marketing, content creation, and all things creative. I'm Izzy, your guide through this creative journey, wearing two hats, head of production and senior video editor. But I'm not in this alone. Meet the other half of our dynamic duo, my dad Chris, our director and the creative genius behind Howell Media and Howell Training. Together, we're not just a podcast, we're a father-daughter team on a mission to bring you insights, tips, and laughs from the heart of the creative industry. Whether you're a business looking to up your video game or a budding creative hungry for knowledge, this is the place to be. We've got real life experiences, expert advice, and a sprinkle of anecdotes to keep things interesting. So if you're ready to unlock the power of video, bespoke content, and training to achieve amazing results, you're in the right spot. Fasten your seatbelts because this is Looks Like We Made It, where we turn creativity into success, one episode at a time. Let's go.
Let's go.
Hello.
Hello.
How are you doing?
I'm all right. How are you?
Well, we have a very special guest with us today.
We do.
So this has changed the dynamic completely because normally I just talk at you for a while. But we have a special guest today, which is Joe Long.
Hello.
Hello,
Hello,
round
Joe.
of applause. Round of applause.
Thank you. I feel very privileged.
I'll put a round of applause in there. But Joe, we've been trying to get you on a podcast for a while, and I'm so glad you're here. You're very in demand.
Thank you. Am I? Well, you know how things are.
Yes. So tell us a little bit about what you do.
Okay, so, well, my business name is Joe Long Consulting, which I guess kind of tells you that I'm a consultant.
clue.
And it's
There's a
me.
clue in the name,
Yeah,
isn't
it's a
it?
small clue in there. But I work with businesses relating to their marketing. So I'm a strategic marketer, which means that I'm kind of like the in-betweener between a business achieving what it wants to achieve and the marketing tactics it puts in place to create brand presence and boost their reputation and get their name in front of the right people, really.
Love it.
Fantastic. I have to say, it's proper grown-up stuff, isn't it?
Does that sound professional?
It sounds very professional.
The look of fear in Chris's eyes there as he realised he
What
has
does
to
that
talk about grown-up things. But yeah, so how did we end up becoming connected? We've known each other a while, haven't we?
Yeah.
Well, we kind of know each other through work, and we're also in the the business metropolis that is Barnard Castle.
I know, it's huge as well.
It's-
I mean,
and
how
I-
we came across each other, I do not know.
I
There
do
we
not
are.
know.
It's
Not
booming.
in
Yeah.
this industry. And as you know, I'm a one-man crusader to make Barnard Castle the centre of creative and technical excellence.
Yes.
It's still a work in progress.
How's it going?
It's
always
going
a
fine.
journey, isn't
It's
it?
always a journey, but we're going to get there. It's all in hand. But I think the crucial thing, that one of the brilliant reasons that we were keen to get Joe on the podcast is to talk about Joe's amazing work with sustainability.
Yes, and that is the question.
Because it is the thing.
Yeah,
It's
it is
the-
it is a bit of a
It's the
thing.
thing.
It's a bit of a
Can
thing.
I
Is
ask
it a-
my question, people?
sorry.
Oh, sorry. Go on.
Which is, how can I make my marketing sustainable? That is the question. So carry on. Carry
Okay,
on.
so, well, I was going to start with, I mean, sustainability is such a buzzword at the minute. Is
Okay.
it overused? Thoughts?
Well, I if I'm going to, this is good, isn't it? It's like a proper discussion. I would argue that somebody that owns and runs businesses, I don't really know much about it. But what I've got is like a dangerous amount of knowledge. Like with our film production recently, we've been increasingly asked to give our kind of like environmental impact on our production and what's been kind of what's our sort of energy consumption, carbon,
and how efficient our
how
kit is,
efficient our kit is.
like even
Yeah.
down so far as doing meter readings before and after shoots and stuff like that to get a
really?
sense of it.
So I suppose what we've actually done is we've taken an incredibly broad brush here and said, "Come on, Joe, tell us about sustainability."
Yeah,
and we
that's
could
the
be here
problem,
for
isn't it?
basically a fortnight, couldn't we?
Yeah.
In your kind of experience, because you are kind of
I'm flying the flag.
Miss Sustainability,
I am
Ms.
flying-
Ms. Sustainability.
Yes.
Like kind of what sort of what sort of things should we be doing?
Okay. So first of all, sustainability is so broad. It incorporates so much. So I try now to look at sustainability in 3 columns. So you might have heard of the ESG. Have you heard of ESG?
Assume we haven't.
Okay.
That means no.
It's definitely nodded. Chris is like, So ESG stands for environment, social impact, and governance. Okay, so if you think, basically what sustainability is doing, in my opinion, is making a business or an organisation or an individual just become more responsible. So that might be looking at how they impact the environment, so the planet. It might be how they impact their social environment, so it might be their employees or it might be their family, it could be themselves, whatever that might be. And then governance, so how do we run businesses, what policies do we have in place, all that kind of stuff. And they're all intertwined clearly as well. So for me, that kind of incorporates sustainability as a whole. But there's also the question of, when you ask, how do I make my marketing sustainable? Is that sustainability as in you want longevity from your marketing, or do you want to impact the ESG side?
Interesting.
It's so
Ooh, I
difficult
see,
to
yeah.
navigate.
That's-
You see.
So
This
the-
is the complexity of it all.
Yeah, so there are different columns, and I think that's where, because from a filmmaking and content creation perspective, I automatically look on the kind of surface level, and I think, well, if you're having a film produced, that's automatically more sustainable than printing 1,000 flyers. And actually,
You're getting to the actual nitty
but
gritty
yeah,
of
I mean,
the
when
thing, aren't you?
when I think of sustainability, that's how I see it. I see it in terms of almost like tangible, will this be thrown in the bin or will this just be shared on
Yeah.
an online server? But actually, when you break it down, there's so much more underneath that when you scratch the surface.
Things like a full life cycle of a product, for example, even if it's a service like a film, there's clearly an element to that, and that's one part of looking at the whole of the sustainability umbrella. It's a bit like marketing. If you say, like, do you do marketing? Well, what do you mean? Because it incorporates so many things. And sustainability, for me, as a buzzword, if you like, or people just throwing it around, means exactly that. And also, I think there's been so much kind of greenwashing and lots of corporate impact on the word, and I'm doing the bunny ear thing, sustainability, and then being caught out a little bit, you know, so not really doing what they're saying, or maybe doing part of what they're saying. They're not being very transparent necessarily, or they're kind of just offsetting rather than looking at themselves. So again, as a business, as a filmmaker, because obviously you're media makers, you guys, then maybe it's a case of looking at what you do in your business as well as what you deliver to your clients. So your clients might come and ask you, you know, what's your data output, what's your emissions output, whatever it is for this filming or whatever. But actually, what are you then also doing within your business? Because that also contributes. So it's looking like internally within the business and then looking outwardly as to what other impacts you can have as well.
I think that's really interesting, because I think that the other thing as well is like a lot of legislative things. It's almost like, well, actually, as an organisation, and as individuals, I believe we should have like a social responsibility to make changes and do these things, as opposed to it being imposed, on us by legislation. Because it's one of those things, isn't it? Like, well, are we in a situation where we're sort of like actually doing the right thing, or we're presenting to the world that we're doing the right thing? And I think there's a real difference between that. And it's also interesting that, you know, from our perspective, I suppose I've kind of had my head in the sand a little bit, thinking, well, it doesn't really affect us. We're not a manufacturing business. We don't, you know, we're not burning things. We're not kind of like, you know, we're not part of that kind of environmental impact at all. But in reality, you know, as he said, and that it's a much more social responsibility that you should be doing anyway. And I would also say that on, you know, it is something that we will be embarking on, so you can quote me on that.
But you've heard it here, folks.
Yeah, absolutely.
But to my mind as well, the other side of it is that I think it will enable us to learn more about the business as well. So you might find that in a quest to being more sustainable as a business and being reportable in what we do, I think we'll find efficiencies in the business anyway.
Absolutely.
So
that's what most businesses do find,
so I
actually.
think
Certainly as a starting point. You know, you're always going to get to a point where you put so much in and then it becomes a bit of a stall because like either the next stage is high investment or where are we going to get those extra kind of incremental progress moves? So they're always going to get to that. But most businesses have some really easy, quick wins that they can do. Again, whether it's policies, whether it's looking at their social engagement, whether it's looking at the environmental impact. So you mentioned that you don't burn things. No, you don't. But you do use batteries, for example, and you also use a lot of data.
Yeah.
So when you said about you think about paper being bad for the environment, well, there's lots of changes that have been made in industries that use paper to kind of counteract that, to make sure it's not as impactful. So, for example, it might be different resources of paper, it might be where the trees are planted, it might be where that, or that whole process of how it's captured, how it's manufactured for what industry, and then what happens afterwards. So even if it's a leaflet, for example, does that then go and create an egg box? An egg box then gets composted, so it goes back into the land, maybe.
Yeah.
You know, it's that kind of thing. So it's thinking about, it's not necessarily about burning things or whatever, it's what do you do, what do you use? So even like our phones, all that kind of stuff, when we inevitably replace our phones, when you replace your equipment, what are you buying, but also what are you doing with that old equipment? Can it be refurbed and put into schools and used for media lessons? I don't know, maybe you do that already.
Wow.
That's basically that's a really interesting point, because in reality what we do is, because whenever we buy a significant piece of equipment, it comes into the business for a predetermined amount of time.
Yeah.
And at the minute we sell it.
Okay.
So at the end,
someone else is using it.
So someone else is using it.
So rather than throwing it away,
but it's only ever a commercial. It's only ever a commercial decision. You know, up until this conversation or conversation that we've had
Big
away
changes
from,
are coming.
you know, away from this environment, away from the podcast. You know, ultimately, it hasn't been. It has never been a real factor in our business. It's not something that like I mentioned earlier, I never really thought it affected us.
Yeah.
Which is obviously wrong and naive of me, but ultimately that's the reality that all the decisions we've made up until now have been
Well, then
commercial.
all of the sort of there's a lot of myth busting, which I imagine you do a lot of when you're talking about sustainability. Which I feel like we're proper grilling you on that at the minute. But to continue the grilling, whenever I think of sustainability as well, and this is probably showing how
we don't know
ignorant
anything, do we?
I am, basically. We know nothing. But
well, we don't know until we start learning.
Exactly.
So,
and this is the start of that learning journey, is that in my head, I always think sustainability, whenever I think about more eco-friendly things or services or products, I always think they're more expensive. Okay. And that is because, well, you know, because I mean, I know people who order their toilet paper from places and they deliver it and you think that's great, but then also, can't you just buy it from the supermarket? Like, I do think, yes, it's good for the environment, but the cost element and stuff, like sustainability, is it more expensive? But also, how can businesses or smaller businesses make those sort of small, cost-effective steps to being sustainable? Like, what is it that they can do?
Yeah, so again, it'll depend on which business. And just briefly going back to your point, Chris, about being wrong and... What did you say? Wrong and naive, I think you said, did you?
Story of my life.
Sorry to bring that up again, but, you know, and it's not therapy.
You just say, yes, you are.
Yeah. Nothing is wrong. Like, it's only what we know. So there is an element of education in all of this. And that question is perfect, Izzy, to be honest, because every business, in my opinion, can do something, and if we all join together. So again, it's not talking about doing massive step changes and creating massive cost implications for businesses, because I think that's also impractical. It's about doing small changes that don't need any financial investment. It might be people or time, perhaps instead, but will then have a joint impact, because, you know, we know from history all the great revolutions have always been the little people coming together and creting something big.
Absolutely.
Yeah? So that's what we're trying to do, hopefully, and that's what my kind of flag waving is all about, certainly for the North East, because I think the North East is just immense from a business perspective and also a personal perspective, even though I'm from Yorkshire.
We'll whisper it.
But, you know, I'm now North East, so that's cool. And also, I don't want businesses to get to the point where it's a bit of a... Can I say the word Brexit? Is it still a swear word?
It's not. We don't have to bleep it out, don't worry.
Okay. So, yeah, so where's the point where a lot of businesses were literally running around like headless chickens, having to invest in, like, new people to coordinate the paperwork and all that kind of stuff that came out of Brexit that a lot of businesses weren't aware of, or don't now trade in Europe for those reasons because there's so many barriers. Now, rightly or wrongly, whatever happened, so it's there now. But I would rather businesses kind of put steps forward into sustainability and whatever that means, the ESG side, in creating a more responsible business, maybe a more efficient business, and that might be process or it might be cost. But do that now rather than waiting for, somebody from wherever to come down saying, right, you have to report on this now and you have to do this and you have to do that. Well, actually, if you can already prove that you're making some progress in that and you can do it retrospectively as well, then, why wouldn't you do that? And there's not many business owners that I know that wouldn't want to make their business better. And again, that might be attracting new employees or retaining their employees because they're amazing and awesome. It might be making it more efficient. It might be, building it up for selling, but making it a really amazing proposition. Whatever that might be, there's all those business owners that want to create that. So I've forgotten your question. How do small, medium businesses... That was a real rant, wasn't it? I'm so sorry.
No, keep going. This is fascinating.
How small, medium businesses can make those cost-effective changes. So again, it might be as simple as, and this is one of my probably the first steps I would ever do, is go on someone's website, a business or an organisation's website, and see what policies they've got listed there. If they are a business, like I know you guys don't shout about diversity and I can't say it, it's Monday morning. Diversity and inclusivity, but I know you're very open-minded and you take people on for their credentials and their ability to learn.
Absolutely.
It's not about what they look like, how they act, or anything else. But I don't know, actually. I haven't checked your website. I don't think you've got a policy on there to say that.
No, we don't. That's true.
No.
I mean,
But if you did do that, all it's doing is wearing a badge saying, actually, this is how we work, this is who we are.
Yeah, and I think that's whether it's just through being a family business or what, we've always been very inclusive, and we almost have things about our business that I'm sure it's the same for a lot of businesses out there, that they have certain elements to their business and who they are and their personality that they never really come across or they never talk about because it seems normal to them.
Exactly.
Like weirdly, when we started working together as a father and daughter, that was just normal for us, and we were actually kind of surprised when people thought that was quite interesting, and that became part of our identity. But to begin with, we didn't really think of that as a kind of thing to shout about. So I imagine a lot of businesses are sustainable in some ways, and they don't even think to talk about it.
That's true. I mean, without being flippant, but I am going to be a little bit. We only have one policy that we have in the organisation.
Do I have to make this an explicit podcast now?
We only discriminate against one type of person, don't we?
Okay.
And we have a strict anti-dickhead policy in this business.
Yeah, so I'm fired.
Bleep City.
I was going to say.
There's a bus for people like
I'm ticking the explicit box now.
Oh, no. Well,
that's fine. It's fine. I'll bleep you.
You know what I mean? Like, we don't shout about kind of our inclusivity and all the rest of it, because that's just natural to us, without waving too big a flag. Okay. But we can't be doing with people who are that word I mentioned earlier.
Absolutely.
We just have a strict policy.
I totally get you, and I'm probably on the same platform I think as you guys are, to be fair.
But it is, and it's absolutely fascinating, though. That, I mean, I suppose from as I said, I'm probably just going to say exactly the same bloody thing as I said before. But I want it to be done for the right reasons,
totally,
and not because someone's telling me to do it, or that we have to do it. Because then
or
it
that
just
you
becomes,
should do it.
or you should do it. Because then it just becomes another kind of thing. It's just like another box ticking exercise,
which there's plenty of as
and
well to do with sustainability. Yeah. So I agree, and I think I'm very probably picky about people I work with as well, and I align my values with people I work with because that makes the best clients for me, and hopefully I'm the best alignment for them as well. And in the same vein, those businesses who are genuinely looking at elements of their business for the right reasons will be successful in it. Those who are doing it for a tick box, well, those are the cases that come out of greenwashing, green hushing, whatever you want to say. So there's definitely an element of being careful about what you do, but, and coming back full circle, back to the marketing thing.
Love it.
See how I did it? These are all marketing opportunities. So again, it's not necessarily about being very kind of like blasé and saying, oh yeah, like we're all inclusive, blah, 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 whatever. It's not about that. It's just saying to people, this is how we work because we're very professional. This is a value that we really embrace, and this is how we do that. There's nothing wrong with saying that, is there?
No, I think so.
No.
And consumers and business to business consuming is all about kind of getting to know the business, getting the background of the business. So the fact that people found father and daughter business together quite interesting, isn't that just like a real evidential item that people do want to see what's behind the business, and they're really interested in how the business works and what you stand for, what your purpose is. why have you set up Howell Media to be what it is now? What's it going to be going into the future? So I think there's lots of stories around that, around the backgrounds, the business and all that kind of stuff, but also all these sustainability or ESG elements that can also create amazing marketing content. And then it sets you away from the crowd, because a lot of businesses aren't doing this.
Totally, and that's really interesting, because I think, like, is there speaking from personal experience, that I always, if I'm as a consumer, whether it's in personal life or business, it does give you that it's an extra selling point that you are doing something, or you're doing your bit for the environment.
Yeah.
And I think, like, that it's not something that we've ever really put side by side in our offering, because, like you said, we never really think about it whether we think straight to the big factories and whatever. But for consumers, is it something that will tip them over the line? Is it that extra selling point?
And I guess it depends. There'll be those people who don't care, that could not give a fig about what what you're talking about ESG wise or anything else. Okay, that's fine, but they may not be your customers anyway. So okay, whatever. But there will be those customers who are definitely looking for that alignment as well. And even when you said about toilet roll, you mentioned earlier, it's like, why wouldn't you just buy it from the supermarket? So there's always going to be different levels of consumer, whether again it's business or whether it's direct to consumer, of people who want to invest or can afford to invest, and there's different levels of that as well. So it might be someone can't buy from one of those amazing responsible businesses that are trying to source toilet paper from, in inverted commas, a better place, or extra life cycle, whatever that might be. But the supermarkets are even making their own kind of name with this, about kind of like the fact that it's got either less sheets or more sheets, or they're not quilted anymore. They're just like single layer, because do we really need the quilts?
We do, really.
Well, I like the quilt, but
Yeah, it's what we can live without, isn't it? Yeah,
it's what moves you can make, and less packaging. So it's definitely recyclable, or it's curbside recycling packaging, rather than having to take it somewhere else. All that kind of stuff, it makes it easier. So even those people who perhaps find it more difficult from a financial point of view to invest in that kind of element, doesn't mean they can't actually make those moves towards it.
It's all about small changes as well.
Always small changes. Again.
From a business's perspective, and maybe there's like a business owners or people in business listening to this now, and I think, okay, I some of that resonates with me. Where do they start? What's the first step?
Am I allowed to do some self-promotion?
You can do some
Go for it. Plug away.
Just like get in touch with me.
Ultimately, you've gone out, you've learnt about it, you've got qualified in it. You know your stuff. You're not winging it. So in that regard, I think why not?
And how did you get into doing sustainability as part of marketing? Because again, we're in sort of the same world, but that really sets you apart from other marketers and strategy experts. Because, like I said, it's blown our minds today anyway. But how did you get into that?
Yeah, it's a bit of a weird story, but that's probably no surprise.
We welcome weird stories. Bring them in.
So I've always been interested in kind of eco stuff where I can. I'm not saying that I'm perfect by any means. I have a long way to go. But, I can make small changes. I try and make the best I can. I try and buy the best food I can afford. I try and make everything from scratch, all that kind of stuff. Recycle as little as I can, or reuse it as much as I can, all that type of activity. And there are a few things happening in the news, specifically around greenwashing and corporates being caught out for it. And there are cases in America. There were a couple of cases over here, but again, they seem to have disappeared.
Ooh, conspiracy,
isn't it? Yeah. And basically, I was very lucky. I was invited a few years ago to go on a business mentoring program as a mentee. With Newcastle University Business School, and I was invited back to do another kind of research of that. And I was partnered with a guy called Stephen King, who now is a great friend. He's an incredible human being. He's got vast business experience. And he kind of said to me, so what do you want to do? And I said, I need to have a bit of a switch change in my marketing. Like, I'm different already because I have a commercial expertise. So I'm slightly different to your average marketer, in my opinion anyway. I said, but I really want to incorporate something about environment because it's really getting on my nerves and I feel like I need to do something. And if I don't do something within my business where I've got some voice, then I think I might pack my bags and go and strap myself to a ship somewhere in the ocean till I can protest, because that's where I got to the point. I just didn't know what else to do. And he was a bit like, oh my goodness.
So you needed to find a more...
A Greenpeace ship. I don't know. Other ships are available, I'm sure, you know.
Yeah, okay.
So if we see you looking at the shipping forecast,
This is the thing. So Stephen then said, how does your husband feel about this? I needed to do something, you know. Whether you believe rightly or wrongly in climate change, whether you believe all the kind of media stuff about it, is kind of irrelevant. You know, I want my children to grow up in a world that I've enjoyed, that is green and, you know, has a nice climate. I mean, it's a livable climate. You know, it's only the clothing that's wrong.
It's touch and go here.
Yeah, exactly. You know, but also have some, you know, longevity, and know that when I leave this planet, whenever that is, that actually I've done the best I can do to look after it, because, you know, we are not no matter how much the human ego loves it, we're not the be-all of this planet. We are part of the ecosystem, and we either help it or we don't help it. So this is my way of trying to help it as much as I can do. And I think, you know, I work with some amazing businesses. I've worked with businesses in the past that are also awesome. And I think there's a great place for businesses who have this kind of attitude and want to be more responsible to make the world a better place.
So Stephen, it is Stephen, isn't it? So he steered you away from strapping yourself to a ship.
So he basically said,
to learn
he said to me,
stuff.
how does your husband feel about that? And I said, I haven't told him. He might just see the case at the door. He said, I don't think that's a great way to your marriage, to be fair. So I'm like,
wow.
Oh yeah, it's true.
I love that.
Yeah, so he worked with me quite closely on trying to find this pathway through of becoming more of an advocate for sustainability on ESG, and therefore that came out of doing my level 6 accreditation, which I managed in 3 months, which is quite, I think it's a degree level in 3 months. I'm a bit like, whoa.
Wow. Did you sleep at any point?
No, I did a lot of crying,
and
a lot of tantrums. My poor husband, I think he aged about 10 years while I was doing it himself.
It's all worth it.
Yeah.
But that's amazing. And yeah, wow. That's no ship strapping coming soon then.
So hopefully no ships. I know,
that
was dangerous.
I know.
No ships strapping for the foreseeable future, hopefully.
Wow. And
let's do it from here and see if we can make the Northeast even greater.
I love it. And I have one more question before I get onto my fun question at the end, which isn't that... Well, it is fun, but I went professionally fun just because, you know...
Of course, we've got a real professional
We've got a real grown-up here, which is what is your favourite example of sustainable marketing that you've seen? What is your favourite thing that someone's done?
That's
and
really
obviously, please take time to think about it, because I realise that's a big question. But
I don't think there's just one, honestly.
Okay.
I don't think there's just one. I think there are lots of brands who are embracing the message of becoming more... This is a really stalled out.
Oh no,
answer,
go
isn't it?
for
I'm
it.
so sorry, it's not very
The magic of editing.
Yeah, I was going to say it's
my brain working.
We'll speed you up.
Yeah, I know. I think it's the businesses that are embracing the human aspect. So there's also, not to go off on a tangent, and I will come back to your question.
No, go for it.
But this whole AI thing, which is quite scary, or can be quite scary in some forms, but also can be amazing. But I think there's also an element where tech has taken us... I'm making myself sound very old here. But tech has taken us from a place where we were community-led to somewhere where we're quite disparate as human beings, and actually we were evolved to be communities and live as communities. And I think those businesses that embrace this kind of ESG attitude bring back that community feel, because you're looking at the social aspects. So you're not looking just at what your impact of your business brings. You're looking at what it has on the community around you, so the human community around you. Fumes and this, that, and the other. Well, that's pretty grim. Okay, let's see what you can do about that. But equally, it might be that Howell Media, for example, you get involved in that whole reuse of equipment and work with schools on film and photography and stuff like that. You know, there's that whole kind of like social and community aspect. It's much more human contextually. No,
because it's not just about
we're still
the
part of that
environment, it's about the people that are in that environment,
likes us to think we're the all and end all. We're not, but we're part of that still. And that's really, so it's those businesses that I reflect on And a lot of them are very small businesses. So, for example, now I'm going to have to pull some out of the bag, aren't I? My mind's gone
The
blank.
clock's not ticking, don't worry.
Yeah. So, there are lots, certainly in the North East, who are looking at opportunities for businesses. For example, Tree Appeal is one where a business can use that as their CSR, so their corporate social responsibility. So you can support trees being planted in an area specifically. They pick the trees specifically for that area and they nurture them. So it's not just picking out some trees somewhere in outer Mongolia. I'm sure there are other places that are good for outer Mongolia, but trees get planted, you pay some cash, trees get planted, they never get looked after, and you don't even know what happens.
Okay.
And it takes maybe 20 or 30 years for that tree maybe to grow, if it manages to grow.
Wow.
So why would you do that rather than pick someone that's local to you or local to a community that you're invested in, so a school community in the North East, get the trees that are right for that environment, and then have those planted, maybe by yourselves and the community, and then looked after.
And that's also good PR as well.
Amazing PR, amazing marketing opportunity. So, there is that kind of harsh business side to it. It's all marketing opportunity, this.
Oh, totally.
It's all
Totally. And
for advantage. I'd tell you someone else, Johnson Clark, who are surveyors based in the north of Yorkshire. They're doing amazing stuff on this.
Ooh, we'll definitely check it out. I think...
in fact, on my podcast, sorry, a little plug
No,
again.
plug away.
My podcast, my first one's with Stephen, and the stuff that they're doing is incredible.
That is
it's
amazing.
Really impressive.
Well, there's an example of, which just came to mind, of community, whether it is for the environment or not, I'm not sure, but that is something that just came to mind. Have either of you heard of the fish doorbell? No.
Oh, come on.
So,
is this the silly question? Or is
no, this
actually
isn't a silly question. This is actually a real thing,
Yeah.
which is basically in the Netherlands, they have a dam, which is obviously to power electricity and, as sort of a part of a sort of
hydro scheme.
There you go. But
so you are an adult after all.
See, who knew?
All the words.
But Peter Pan over there. But but within that, there's a bunch of sort of the scientists behind it who built this dam. They realised that in doing this dam, they blocked a certain species of fish that come through the dam, and actually they didn't want to prevent that from happening. So they set up a camera next to basically a door, and you can go online to the fish. It's called Fish Doorbell, and there's 1,000 people allowed on it at a time, and you can literally sit, and when you see a fish come on the camera, you press a button and it opens the door. But it's all powered by people watching online.
Amazing.
So if you're ever bored, and trust me, if you get, because I've done it before where I've sat and then you get really into it, and then an hour's gone by and you've realised you've just sat staring at a webcam underwater waiting for fish. But when you get one, it's the most exciting thing in the world.
Well, before we wrap up, that's fantastic. That's really, really
That's
fantastic.
amazing.
I was going to tell you there was a campaign a few years ago, which was an incredible campaign, and it was in London, and it was an asthma charity put up a billboard by a busy junction, and it was just a plain white billboard, nothing on there at all. And then what they'd done is they'd actually coated the words on the billboard. They'd actually put some glue on the billboard that spelled out the words about how damaging the air quality was. Oh. And over the coming days and weeks, the diesel particles, emissions, stuck to the glue. Oh. And then by the end of a couple of weeks, it spelled out how bad the air quality was in that area.
That is scary.
And it was the actual diesel emissions that were actually making the billboard deliver the thing.
That's amazing.
And that is so
That's
so
creativity.
What did they do after that?
I just saw an amazing. I don't know. I suppose the story is that it's just a super awareness.
It's a way to make you stop.
Like,
Yeah.
wow,
Well, hopefully
so
that
powerful.
then was delivered to the council.
Well, I suppose this might have even been pre kind of
been
ULEZ and all that sort of stuff.
okay.
It might have been then. But anyway.
Wow. So before I get on to my last
'cause-
question, do you want to plug anything? Where can people find you? Where can they
Joe's
talk
done
to
enough
you?
plug-in, if you ask me.
No, as in
No,
like,
I've done quite a lot already.
where can our audience reach you?
Yeah, if you go to my website, which is www.joelongconsulting.com, or you can email me at joe@joelongconsulting.com. I'm on LinkedIn as Joe Long, funny enough. I'm also on Instagram as Joe Long Consulting, and on TikTok. I'm testing TikTok, I know, as Joe's Marketing Muses.
Love it.
There we
Love
go.
it. Great. So you're all over the Tinterwebs.
Yeah, I'm all over the platforms. Well, as many as I think is appropriate.
It's fantastic.
Right,
It's a lot to manage all of them,
yeah,
isn't it?
Yeah, and I'm in the process of launching a podcast. It's going to be called, I think, the Responsible Marketing Podcast.
Excellent. And
I'll
you can
keep you
get
posted on
a
that.
pair of idiots like us on as well
I
if
think
you want.
I might have to get 3 mics and we'll definitely have a 3-way on that
This
one,
is a
in
good
the
audition.
nicest possible way.
We just auditioned for your podcast.
Yeah,
but my question
perfect.
is to close, because I
Yeah.
always end the podcast with a question that just basically I try and get a silly answer out of Chris mainly. But my
Okay.
question to round off the day isn't that silly, but what was your first job?
Oh, blimey. So, well, as you know, I've never really had a job.
Still looking for
I'm
it.
still looking for it. If I could jump in.
Go for it.
I was I was a paper lad for a while, but that wasn't really my...
You're showing your age when your job had lad in the title.
Lad.
I always say.
Well, actually, no.
Official title.
But I was actually, both my first and only jobs had the word lad, because I was a paper lad, but that didn't really sort of count. But I was a butcher's lad, and I really loved that. I used to work on the indoor market, and they kept me out the back, and I used to make burgers and sausages and stuff. It was brilliant. Great bunch of
mincing.
guys. I'm quite good at mincing. It was, yes, so I was making a butcher's,
Wow, so
butcher's lad.
now you're a media lad.
And now I'm a media lad.
Lads.
And Joe, how about you?
So mine was actually cleaning in an old... Sorry, I can't say that phrase anymore because it's inappropriate. In a care home. I nearly slipped back
Wow.
to, yeah. So
Ah.
I worked cleaning in a care home for a while. And then I decided actually it wasn't for me, although I did enjoy the company of the people. I didn't enjoy the cleaning because I'm not a cleaner. I don't enjoy cleaning at all. So then I went lambing.
Oh, wow,
So I
that's
lambed for a bit. And then I
that's a
worked at
jump.
a honey factory and I jarred
Wow.
honey and peanut butter. Yeah.
That's a real career jump from one to the other, isn't
Yeah.
it? Wow,
Yeah.
that's
There you
amazing.
go. That was all in about a year, actually. All the
Wow,
first
that is
three.
You've never had a job, so...
I've never had a job. I'm still looking if anyone's listening. Please take me. No, I worked 4 hours a week in the menswear section in Debenhams.
Oh.
4 hours was not much a week. I made like
Wasn't
20
much.
quid a week, and I remember at the time thinking, oh God. And
What
if
did you do? Did you like put the socks out? Or?
I scanned things, I
Oh.
spaced the hangers. I had every man of a certain age tell me when shoes were 50% off. Does that mean I get the left one free every time? And every
Still a
time I
great
had to
joke,
go,
though.
yeah. But yeah, so that was very interesting. And then yours is a lot more exciting, I think, because you've done quite a leap
Varied
from
things.
lambing to sustainable marketing.
Well, yeah.
Love it.
Huge.
The Joe Long story. Right. So you can find us every other Tuesday on Looks Like We Made It, wherever you get your podcasts. You can leave us a review on Apple Podcasts if you want to be so nice. And you can check us out at www.howellmedia.co.uk. And we will see you very soon. Bye for now.
Thank you.